TradFi is rebounding after a bit of a sell-off yesterday. Crypto taking a little bit of a leg back, especially our friends over in Solana. We'll be discussing that and much more today on Money Never Sleeps. Welcome back, everybody. As we get going today, do us a favor, hit that like button. If you have not yet, subscribe to the channel, drop some comments, get in on the conversation today. Nothing that Kevin or I say is financial advice. Please, for the love of God, do your own research before making any sort of financial decisions. Kevin, how are we doing today?
Frustrated, man. But again, that's the way the market goes sometimes. Can't always be happy. But, for the most part, just looking at things, I'm feeling okay. How are you doing today?
I'm just chilling, man. Like we were talking before we started, days like this are when I feel like I bring very little to the table here, and I have to just lean on you heavily for technical analysis because I'm not doing anything in the markets at the moment. Like I'm sitting here, I'm just trying to figure out ways to accumulate more cash. I'm not buying anything at this point. I got my stuff that I'm holding. I'm not trying to force any plays right now, but I think too many people who are in this market day in and day out, this is a really dangerous time because you have to take what the market gives you. You can't force it. Like we are not, I don't think the type of people who can move the markets are watching this show. I'll just put it like that. So
No.
if you're just a pawn in this larger game that, the big money is playing and that is on, display around the world, like you can't try to force any plays if they aren't there to be made. There was great buying opportunities, middle to late of last year. I'm happy for when, I bought my Bitcoin sub 20K. Maybe it goes back there, maybe it doesn't, but I don't know right now. And at the same time, I'm not trying to like force anything to happen. So it's a really weird place in the market. I thought we would be seeing, we're seeing volatility, and that's what I was expecting. We're seeing a huge move up in TradFi today. Like the Dow's, up 500 points, NASDAQ's up like 250. And that's great. And it's fun to see green, but I am not getting ahead of myself here. I'm not going off of, you sent me a tweet that, stable coins have seen all of these inflows, which is bullish for price action because everyone's been buying crypto. I don't know if I believe that. So I think it's
Sure
really, it's a dangerous time right now if you don't have like a solid game plan, but also you have to be willing to alter that game plan as new information comes your way.
100%. And I think, I sent that a tweet last night. I was going pretty heavy into the UVIX because, I do believe volatility is going to pick up. However, the only issue with the VIX sometimes is it does get crushed when markets go sideways or markets go up, right? It really depends on the markets going down and specifically the S&P. So with what we've seen, I kind of cut my position just a little bit because we don't necessarily know if something crazy is going to happen sooner or later. I think a lot of signs are pointing towards something like that, especially in the market. And I think that more so consumer capitulation, right? We're seeing a lot of unemployment start to rise. We're going to get those numbers tomorrow on the actual unemployment data. Whether that's accurate or not, we'll have to wait for the next revision. But we're definitely going to see some, consumer capitulation, I think, coming soon. But is that going to change the direction of the markets? I don't know. A lot of people seem to be going pretty heavy into this Santa rally. We'll look at the charts in a little bit. We'll see if Santa has gifts or coal for us this year. Newsflash, I'm going to be telling you what Santa's bringing, so you probably know what he's going to be. What do you call it? I don't know. I don't celebrate Christmas.
You're stocking with?
Yeah, I celebrate Christmas, but I'm not huge into Christmas. But yes, stocking stuffers. It's probably going to be coals. But yeah, I mean, I think the markets are this is kind of a shitty week. This is kind of like a lost week if you're a bear. It's like, okay, now we just kind of have to wait, see how things play out. It's not necessarily fun to be waking up and seeing the Dow up this insane amount. I mean, if I look at the Dow right now, just on the weekly, guys, it's over 1,000 points up. It's up 1,300 points, almost 1,400 points on the weekly. We'll get in the charts in a second, but yeah, it's just not a fun week. We're kind of just waiting for something to happen, and these bulls, you just kind of have to let them tire themselves out.
Bulls on parade, man. It's like the running of the bulls. You just try to wear them out and then you just stab them real quick. All right, don't stab anybody.
Violence.
That was not me
Jweb.
saying that you should be stabbing bulls. Please, for the love of God, there's too much violence in this world already. Okay, we got Apple earnings after the close today. We had some economic data in regards to initial jobless claims and continuing jobless claims. Those are up slightly. Tomorrow morning should be interesting. We have non-farm payrolls. We're expected to see 170,000 jobs added in the month of October. Unemployment rate is expected to come in at 3.8%, which would be the same as last month. Hourly wages expected to go up 0.3% on the month and 4% year over year. Wondering how that'll look once the UAW data is involved in that in the coming months, and other economic data as well, and how the Fed deals with it. Once again, I just do not envy the Fed at this point. I'm sure J Pow is not sleeping well. Just, really hoping that shit doesn't hit the proverbial fan. Okay. Looking at the market today, we see VIX is down, dollar is down, risk on assets are up in a fairly sizable way, at least when it comes to TradFi. Looking at some of the bigger names, I mean, if you bought Tesla under $200 the other day, you're looking great there. It's back up to almost 19. Nvidia was down under 400 for a hot second. It's back to 437. So we're seeing some of these rally pretty nicely off of their local bottom here. If things continue to break the right way, that rally could continue. If things come in tomorrow and we have a big number of jobs added and the unemployment rate is down, then look out, because the Fed is going to have to be like, I mean, they're already scratching their ass over there, but it's going to be even itchier if we get a hot jobs reading tomorrow.
Yeah, it's kind of weird when it comes to unemployment, I think, though, because I think all signs are pointing towards 4% or something closer to it. Like, I genuinely believe that based off how many layoffs we've seen these companies kind of take in the month of October. Whether that, is incorporated into this data, we'll see. But if we get a 4% unemployment data, then it shows signs that the economy is slowing down, right? So that could be one thing where investors are like, okay, maybe this isn't going to go up as much, or maybe in the short term it decides to rally a little bit more. So that's one thing to consider. If it's conflicted where unemployment's going up, and also what else is coming out today, tomorrow, jobless claims,
Hourly wages.
Yeah, and if those continue to go up, then that puts more stress on J Powell and the Fed. So it's going to be really interesting to see how tomorrow plays out. And here's the thing: we kind of rallied into FOMC, and we're still rallying going into what could be an interesting day when it comes to jobs data. Jobs data really hasn't been doing too much recently, right? We haven't moved necessarily the market too much when we get those numbers, but it's interesting that it's happening on the last day of the week. We're going into the weekly close. We've rallied for 4 days straight. We even take a look at some of these charts. On the 4-hourly charts this entire week, we haven't had a single red candle. It's really interesting to see that. And we're also creating a lot of gaps by how much we're pushing up this quick. So I do think euphoria is setting in. We did need a correction. Let's put it that way. We sold off pretty good in the past few weeks. However, are we getting ahead of ourselves too fast, too quick? It really depends on what this data comes out, or if anything else comes out, because I think the data is going to come back bad for unemployment, but maybe wages are up.
Yeah, I'm looking at next week, and there isn't shit coming out as it comes to economic reports. Like,
yeah,
it could be. I don't know. I'm gonna want to have a better take on this tomorrow. Like, I'm gonna look back at previous months, and if there is any sort of carryover from, because usually like the structure is the same. Like the first Friday of a month, you get the jobs report from the previous month. The second week of the month, you get second full week, you usually get like CPI. The last Friday is always PCE. And so I want to look back on like a weekly and kind of see the week after the jobs report, when there's very little economic data coming out, do we see like momentum in either direction carry over into the following days? I think that would be good to know heading into tomorrow. So that's something I'll look into. We'll discuss it more on tomorrow's show. But yeah, like I'll pull up some of those weeks and kind of see what the trend has been of late.
Definitely. I do want to talk about Forex before we get into some of the stocks and stuff like that. But I'm going to
Yep.
pull up something that I saw on Twitter today, and this kind of leads into Forex to some extent. So we do know that the European central banks decided to halt rates. They kept them elevated. I think at the current rate, whatever it was, I think it was like 5.25%, very similar to what we currently are seeing. But this is what we're seeing in Germany right now. So we're seeing that the German unemployment change is actually 30K. They were forecasting 14K, unemployment. Previous was 10K, so it's tripled since the previous reading. And we know that this was one of the first economies in the Eurozone that was having a lot of problems, right? We knew that they were seeing tons of contraction in their manufacturing sector. So when there is contractions in the manufacturing sector, that means that once all the orders are coming in and they have completed, then there's going to be people who have nothing to do in terms of work. So eventually these companies are going to have to lay them off because they're just not getting enough orders, not giving them enough work to get, certain jobs done. And eventually that bleeds into the services sector just because, if nothing's being produced, then obviously there aren't going to be the need for people in the services sector to be as present. There's going to be a less demand for those people. So what we're seeing here is a huge contraction in unemployment in Germany. I think this is going to bleed out into a lot of other nations that we're seeing a lot of issues right now in the Eurozone. Sweden is one of them. Italy is another. We're going to have to keep an eye on that. But we also got that really bad PMI data yesterday from the US. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's foreshadowing to what is eventually going to come here. It's just something we need to keep an eye on. This is, I think, the most important data that came out all week was the PMI data from yesterday from ISM. But this is a big number from Germany, and this leads into what's going on with Forex right now because the dollar took a huge dump yesterday, right? Even today, right? It's at 106.129. You can say some of it has to do with FOMC, but I think a lot of it does have to do with what's going on in Europe as well. So yeah, we're seeing that we're on the weekly, we're just sideways trading. We can see that we're overbought on the weekly, but if we look on the daily, we're in a really weird spot. We should have broke out from this and pushed to the upside, but I think that there's a lot of stress currently from what's going on in Japan and also what's going on in Europe. This was a huge week for FOMC, the European central banks, and also the Bank of Japan. They are all had huge reports and meetings this week, and well, this is kind of what's causing the dollar to hold back. I think, in my opinion, it's a lot of what's going on internationally. You can see that this broke back into the parallel channel. It's trading in there. Do I think it's going to hold? Probably not, right? I think this is a bit of euphoria post European Central Bank. The rates are going to stay the current. They're not raising them anymore. They're not cutting them. So I think this is just okay. Let's just take advantage of this and let's keep buying the market for the time being, right? We also see that the USD JPY pairing it found the top of that parallel channel, and it looks like it's coming down a little bit. So we did find a bit of rejection. This is probably from Bank of Japan, printing some stimulus, trying to combat inflation in their country. To what control they have over that entire ordeal, I don't know. I think that the Bank of Japan is in a very similar position to the Fed. They're absolutely lost, and I don't know how they're going to dig themselves out of that hole. So we'll just have to see how that impacts, the US dollar. I still think that the US dollar is in a really good position, mainly because we've seen in previous recessions that when things start to collapse, money just flows right into the US dollar. It's a safe place for a lot of investors. We also know that it's the world reserve currency. So I mean, there's a lot of things that can push it up. Again, I always say this because we are seeing a lot of conflicts, in the world right now. We're seeing both in Europe, the Middle East, and stuff like that. The dollar is probably going to remain very strong here. What we're seeing is still just ranging in between 107.193, which we've tested twice. I wish we would have broke above it. However, we tested it twice and we've gotten rejected. So now we have to come back down for support. And we found this as support is once, twice, this is going to probably be a third test of support down here if we are not able to find the legs to push up. So it's really interesting to see how, a lot of the things going outside of the US are definitely aiding in some of this move to the upside from TradFi. As long as the dollar stays down, it's not elevated, then there's a good chance that we can continue to see some of these stocks and indexes rally.
Okay. Anything else on the Forex side that you want to discuss, or should we jump into some crypto here?
Yeah, let's do crypto real quick, and then we'll wrap up with TradFi. We'll look at Apple as the last one today.
All right. Let's get into Bitcoin first.
Definitely. So yeah, it broke out of this triangle that we were talking about, right? It's really interesting how much it shot up because I thought it was going to go for 36K. We did find some resistance right before it, around 35,990. Here's the thing, it shot up higher than the wave 3 that it pumped to. I'm kind of satisfied with saying that this could be the top of the move. However, I know that it's unlikely to say that the top is in, because when you have that many stables, that just absolutely shows an inflow of capital, right, guys? Right, analysts? No, well, we just know that there's so much out there in terms of stables. I don't know how much USDT that Binance has in wallets that are hidden. This thing could stay elevated for a period of time. It could shoot back up into here. We could just be playing liquidation games. I do think that there is eventually going to be a point where they're going to run out of money. Where does that take us? Well, I think it probably is going to take us back to 27K. I think this whole entire move would probably be erased in that situation. However, is that going to happen anytime soon? Remains to be seen. I don't necessarily see a catalyst other than some of the FUD going around, USDT being delisted from Coinbase in the US. I don't know if that's accurate or not. We'll have to see how that plays out. It's not impossible, unlikely, impossible. I'm trying to say something. Impossible. It's not impossible for that to happen, because we've seen that it's happened in other exchanges in other nations. I think that if it does happen here in the US, though, that's a huge market share of USDT. Cuts off a bit of a off ramp for them in the US. So I'd be really interested to see if that plays out. But yeah, I think that this range up here between 36 and 40K is still likely, as long as we're above this wave, this $34,000 level. If we start closing below 40,000, then we're in a different situation. Maybe we can look a little bit lower. There's still a gap down here between 31,797 and 32.5. So if we can't break above this and we start closing below this white line right here at 34K, probably going to be eyeing this right down here. Obviously, the 50 moving average is climbing up fairly soon, so we might be able to find some support in that range. It really depends on how this plays out over the next few days, but I'm satisfied with saying this is wave 5 and this move is over. But I do understand that, there's probably a good chance that we're going to get another spike or something like that. The key is going to be watching a lot of funding rates to see how people are set up in terms of swaps. We get negative funding rate on Bitcoin, probably going to see the price shoot up once again. So just things to keep in mind. But for Bitcoin, it's doing its thing. Bitcoin dominance actually had a pretty good day yesterday. I saw it, or when it went to 36K, I saw it shoot up pretty good amount back to above 34, I believe, or right around 34. Yeah,
54.
like my bad, 54. Yeah, big difference. 54% is around the area where we saw. You can see on the daily that it's oversold. So I mean, you're not buying Bitcoin dominance. It's just a matter of how the markets are reacting. I think that there is a good chance we could see another push up. I still believe 57% is very likely, but we need to see a lot of alts sell off in that case, or we need to see Bitcoin push up significantly, or Bitcoin and alts to sell off, but Bitcoin to remain the most dominant across the entire market cap. Is it possible? Yeah, absolutely. I think that's 57 is probably going to be, I'm not going to say the top, but I think that's going to be a really good level of resistance. We can see that we found it as support back in September of 2020. I think that we're going to find a resistance this time around. So we hit 57. I think that there's going to be a good chance we could see a bit of a pullback, or that might be the reason we are seeing a pullback in crypto. ETH had a pretty good day yesterday too. I think it was above 1850 at one point. Let's see where it currently is. Had a pretty good red candle this morning. You can see that it's, in the middle now. Still bearish engulfing candle, but yeah, we went all the way up to 1873, it looks like today. We went as low as 1784. That's probably this early morning dump that we got for crypto. I mean, Bitcoin's still down $570, $80. We're down about $40 for Ethereum, but that's a bearish engulfing candle. So we'll see how this plays out. I think the move for Ethereum is over. I do think that we got our 5-wave count. Let me just move this over here. This would be wave 5. And then we could say this is wave 4, and that's 5 waves up. I anticipate that we have 3 waves down. And if we do see a lot of these corrections while Bitcoin's still trying to put in its 5th wave, there's a good chance that, okay, Bitcoin dominance is probably going to rise in that instance. So we'll keep an eye on that. Let's look at one of our favorites, and then we'll look at total right after it. Look, there's Solana, our favorite coin of the year so far, right? Yeah, this thing had a pretty good day yesterday. Went all the way up to about $46.78. Right now, it's at $39.89. So we see that this is an extremely frothy coin. There's a lot of trading going on. Let me pull up the volumes real quick so we can take a look at that. Yeah, you can see that there's a lot of volumes here, right? So a lot of people got really excited by the prospect of Solana doing really well, shooting up extremely high. I think people are excited about it. However, let me pull up Sol on let's do it on Binance just to see what their volumes are looking like. It's about the same, right? Volumes just picked up in the past day or so when it got above that 40 level and pushed all the way up here. But again, I say this with skepticism, but it's almost a double top of where we were back in August of 2022, and it uh, proceeded to break the high back in November of 2022, which was the FTX collapse. And we're kind of finding, support right now on the FTX collapse high. So, that Tuesday, November 8th of last year, which is coming up 6 days away. So this is, I think, one that's extremely manipulated because so many people got burned on it. I say it all the time, but I don't necessarily think people who are in Solana right now are buying because they're bullish. I think a lot of people that are in it, or they're buying because they are bullish on Solana, but I think a lot of people who are distributing it are not rebuying at any point. I think they're taking profits and they're saying, okay, we broke even, we barely broke in profit. Let's call it a day. And then, retail can figure out what they're doing next with this move. And again, I talk about, going back to the MEXC global chart, this is still a parallel channel. I mean, if we start closing in this parallel channel, I still anticipate us to come back down and down to the origin down here at $7.6, $7.77, roughly where we were right before the January started to take off. But yeah, I think this is a level that would be, it's very possible that we could push up. I mean, the fact that we're down this much today after shooting up so much, it's just a very frothy time for this asset. I mean, if I pull up CoinMarketCap real quick, which isn't the greatest source of data because they're owned by Binance, which we all know. Solana is currently the top 7. It's the 7th top traded coin right now behind, and by market cap, behind USDC, XRP, BNB, Tether, Ethereum, Bitcoin. Imagine how many of those will still be here by next bull cycle. Probably not all of those, but we're definitely going to see price trade within this range. Does it break? Yeah, maybe. I think that we need to see this get back in the parallel channel if we want to see anything negative for Solana. But again, this is a very scary coin right now, very similar to Bitcoin and BNB, any of those that are highly contested. I mean, even Tron. We should probably take a look at this real quick, just as a joke, because I mean, look at Tron, guys. This thing has just been up only. It has not seen a red day. I mean, it hasn't put in a lower high since
That's
FTX.
crazy. That's
You know,
absolutely crazy.
what do you expect when fucking one guy owns all the supply? Don't get me wrong. Tron's blockchain technology, it's fast as could be. However, its sketches could be too. So I don't necessarily like our boy Justin Sun. Heard he's doing some funny things with some of those DAOs, just absolutely rugging them. But again, I'm not a user of those that technology, so to each their own. But yeah, this is kind of the market that we're in. I don't buy the fact that Tron didn't see more pain. Whether it was TUSD that helped keep this up, that remains to be seen. But let's look at total market cap, and then we can move into TradFi real quick. I think we talked about this yesterday, but we put in a new high for total 3, or just total. This is total market cap. And obviously now we're at probably the triple top where we were expecting. We found some resistance back in right before the month of November, but we pushed up and, it's a new high. So I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing a lot of these analysts, like we talked about, say that stable coins coming in show that there is, growth in the space, that there's inflow of capital. I think the stable coins are the reason that we're seeing this shoot up so much. And the reason I say that is because if we look at the total market cap on the daily, we've seen, kind of trading in this range where it's making higher highs and higher lows. Eventually it finally pushes up. Okay. I think that retail has a lot more money post the March banking collapse. And eventually it, comes down over the summer. This is a lot of stable coins, or not stable coins, altcoins that are bleeding out. Then we get another push, which is kind of fishy right here. And it puts in a lower high, right? Puts in a lower high than it did back in March. And then we start trending down once again. And we're in a parallel channel. So we're anticipating a break, right? But this time here, we push up and it's significantly to the upside, and it's a bigger percentage move than with, back in June. I mean, we shot up what, like $4,000 in one day for Bitcoin alone. That brought up the total market cap an insane amount. And then alts just followed right behind it. But I think this move here, I mean, this one could be natural. We could argue that. I think this one here, though, is 100% those stable coins coming in and propping up the market. I can't necessarily make a better case other than that is what we're seeing. So whatever capital that we're seeing push up here is backed by whatever it is, USDT, FDUSD, TUSD, pick your stable coin. It's one of those, but I don't necessarily think that's USD or whatever other type of international fiat people use to trade that's coming in and is backing a lot of these asset prices. I think that there's a good chance that this is eventually going to break. And again, the fact that I'm seeing this too, higher highs and higher lows, that tells me that it's not going to be sustainable. We'll see though. I mean, that could change. They could keep printing forever. the U.S. government could never get involved. Cynthia Lummis could just be all talk. It remains to be seen what happens when it comes to this stuff. But yeah, so that's pretty much crypto in a nutshell. I have nothing else to say about that. We're just waiting to see what price reacts. I think that pullback is more likely now than it was before. But again, you never underestimate any of these exchanges or people with a lot of money in that space. So let's pull up TradFi now, and we'll just look at some of the things that have been happening the past few days. So this is the S&P, and this is very similar. We just run through the indexes real quick. What we've been doing, lower highs and lower lows, right? We came down, this is the height back in July, August. We came down to, 43.43 back in August, rallied up to 45.40, and then eventually came down and put a lower low in. And then we came up, put in a lower high, came in, put a lower low, and currently we're finding resistance on the 50 moving average and the 200 moving average. And this is the thing that's really fishy to me. We can see that the stochastic RSI is going to be overbought by tomorrow, which is the weekly close, right? So could we push up a little bit more tomorrow? Absolutely. It's very possible, right? The thing that we want to see is, does this high right here at, what is this? This high at 43.93, does this hold, and are we just putting in a lower high? If that's the case, then there's a good chance that we're just following the trend that we've been putting in for the past 3 months, right? I also think that the fact that we have a 50 moving average and a 200 moving average here, and we were closing below it, kind of gave it, the markets a chance to rally and get above it, squeeze some people who are probably going a little bit short, and also try and prevent this death cross, because we did see we got a death cross in the Dow, but the move that we pushed up has created 3 gaps for the S&P on the daily, right? We got one big one here down at 41.31 down to 41.16, small little one here at 41.94 to 41.97, and then a pretty big one that we opened up today from 42.44 all the way up to 42.67. Eventually these will be filled. We've seen even gaps like this, they come down real quick, they get filled that one completely. So that's what we're keeping an eye on with this. I think that we're going to probably close somewhere between the 50 and the 200 EMA. Could this be reversed by tomorrow? Absolutely. Anything can happen, but I do think that as long as we stay below this level up here, we're still in a downtrend for the S&P. NASDAQ, very similar. It's just a matter of seeing if this blue trend line holds. I mean, we can push up to it. We can just put in a lower high here. We got a gap right beneath. I cannot speak today. Beneath it. And then I almost said believer, like Justin Bieber. Man, tweaking today. These markets will get to you. And then right here, we got another. We are believers. I believe this market is full of shit. This right here is a little gap here. So I eventually think that will be filled as well. And the Dow's got 2 gaps, right? See how we got that death cross? Oh my goodness, death cross, and we rallied right into it.
Crap for a second. I was like, I mean, that does make sense too.
I think the market does need a death crap, just like then. But this is the 50 moving average and the 200 moving average. It's the death cross, and we're finding resistance on the 200 EMA right now. We're up 512 points today. Like, honestly, what the fuck? It's not fun if you're a bear, but at the same time, we have to look at, have perspective. Lower high, lower high, lower high. Is this going to be another lower high? Remains to be seen. We're going to be overbought in the daily fairly soon. Every time it gets to the overbought in the daily, it's a pretty good move down. So I think markets are just rallying because there was a death cross there. Treasury yields are down, and it's really easy to rally right now. I mean, you got FOMC out of the way. There's nothing really too crazy in the markets that are going to keep it from, being tanking. But yeah, it's just something to keep an eye on. I'm not necessarily too convinced that we're in a bullish move until we break some of these lower highs. And that's going to be the main gauge for me. But let's look at the VIX real quick, and then we'll look at some of the Apple, and then we'll call it a day. VIX broke down out of this channel. We're finding some support right here. The wild thing is that the VIX has been dropping significantly against the S&P, but out of all the days the S&P has been up, today is probably one of the highest, yet it is the smallest move that we've seen from the VIX, which is an absolutely wild thing to me. It doesn't make any sense. So we'll have to see how this plays out. There is a chart called the VVIX, which I've been keeping an eye on because this tends to break down to the downside, and we see the VIX rally up. So it's just comparing the two. Every time that we, get to this trend line, we either break above it and then eventually come down. And we've done it a few times. Right now, we're seeing that there's probably going to be a death cross with the VVIX, the VIX, which means the VIX would probably rally from here. But, we're finding resistance on the 200 EMA. So there's a good chance that we could get rejected once again and it comes down. I mean, the VIX, this chart compared VVIX against the VIX is you got some room to move to the upside. If we look at the VIX by itself, you can see that it's pretty oversold on the daily. Doesn't mean that, we can't push down lower. I think that they are crushing it because, the market's just going up here. So we got to see how that plays out. Last thing I really want to touch on is Apple. So, or should I say Gapple? Look at all these gaps that Apple has below it. Yeah, I still like our gap Apple joke from before the show, but yeah, this is another thing that's very similar to what we've seen across all TradFi. It's another death cross that's looming. We were closing below 200 EMA. That means that 50 was going to come down. We rallied, right? We shot up. We can see that we're still putting in lower highs across this whole thing, lower lows. Eventually, that's going to break to the upside. And, it's a parallel channel. It's not a perfect parallel channel, so it's less likely that's going to happen. But it's something that we have to keep in mind once the bear market does bottom. There's probably going to be a significant rally for a lot of these. But we created this gap right here between 174, 175. Got another gap down here in the 160 range. Got one from 157 to 158, and we even got one down here at 147 to 146. So there's a lot of liquidity sitting below for Apple. We filled a lot of these gaps to the upside. We filled that one here. I think that we kind of rallied into earnings expecting this to be a really good call. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but this is definitely going to be the impact, I think, for a lot of the tech stocks going into tomorrow. If we do get good earnings, wonderful. I guess we close the week green, maybe. Maybe that's an opportunity for them to take some profits off this move. It really depends, but I think that the aftermarket trading for Apple is going to be really interesting. But I just do want to point out, again, it's no different than what we're seeing across the rest of the markets. Lower highs, lower lows. Failure to break, 182.31 means that we're probably going to put in another lower high and then eventually another lower low. And this is where a lot of liquidity sits. So just keep an eye on that. I think this one is probably the most likely getting tapped. Some of these down here would require a bigger move, but I'm not getting too confident in this move to the upside. It's been 4 days of just green. Sucks to see, guys, but at the end of the day, zoom out is probably going to give you the best chance of looking at what this market's been doing. 3 months down for 4 days up. It's a big trade-off. So just kind of perspective you need to have in this market right now.
Okay. Anything else, or are you good? I'm good.
I'm good, man. I talk too much sometimes. I got to take a death crap after this.
Go take your death crap. Listen, we're here. We got to talk about, what's going on. And when we're just kind of just in this holding pattern, anything that you can show us that is going to help. Yep. You go ahead.
Insolvent banks are up 4% today. That's all I will say. So many of the banks that are on that, have FHLB loans as equity are up today. And I'm like, this is an entirely different type of mental. I don't know. This is wild to see how much it shot up. Just, it doesn't make sense. So hey, if these insolvent banks want to push up, we know that Switzerland's looking at UBS. They're scared about them right now. Hey man, I'm going to just keep shopping for options contracts, keep my time horizon long. Just be patient. I think that's the way to be right now in this market because stupidity.
It's weird with like the housing. Like I was reading up on the housing market a bit more, and like it's just such a fucked up time in general. I mean,
oh yeah, dude.
My wife and I are hoping to have our second kiddo by this time next year, and we're gonna be looking for a new house. And I don't know where rates are gonna be. Like once rates start to go down, like supply is gonna increase, but demand is like it's just such a fucking. It's a really, it's a fucked up area to navigate right now. So I don't know. That's been on my mind. Stupidity in other markets has been on my mind. Strange days, man. Strange days indeed. All right. Thank you for joining us today, everybody. Do us a solid once again. If you have not yet, and if you don't want to, that's cool too, but it'd be a lot cooler if you did. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment, share us out on social media. We really appreciate all that stuff. We'll be back tomorrow to close out the week, discuss Apple earnings, the job report tomorrow morning, what we're seeing, potentially next week in the markets based off of previous months. So, should be a good one tomorrow. I'm excited for it. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe out there, and we will see you next time.
Take care, everyone.